Most people will work their whole life and never build wealth. Not because they weren't smart enough, not because the opportunity never showed up. Something happens long before the first paycheck gets spent. And it has nothing to do with money at all. It happens in the mind. Picture two people starting from the exact same place, same neighborhood, same school, same starting salary. 20 years pass. One of them owns something, a business, a portfolio, a piece of property that pays them whether they show up or not. The other is still trading hours for dollars, still one bad month away from trouble. Nothing about their intelligence explains the gap. Nothing about luck explains it either. Not really. The gap was built in decisions so small, neither of them noticed making them at the time. By the time most people are 10 years old, they've already absorbed a story about what money is and who gets to have it. Maybe it was money doesn't grow on trees. Maybe it was, we're not that kind of family. Maybe nobody ever said it out loud, but they watched it every day in the way their parents flinched at a bill, or joked about being broke, or treated wealthy people like they'd done something wrong to get there. That story becomes invisible. It stops feeling like a belief and starts feeling like the truth. A person can spend 40 years working hard, saving what they can, doing everything they were told to do, and still end up in the same financial place their parents were in. Not because the system failed them, because they never questioned the story they were handed. Two children can grow up at the same dinner table and walk away with opposite beliefs. One hears, "We can't afford that," and learns that money is scarce and frightening. Another, at a different table, hears, "We can't afford that right now, so let's figure out how to change that," and learns the exact same sentence means something entirely different. Same words almost, completely different inheritance. Here's the first reason most people never become wealthy. They inherited a relationship with money, and they never chose one for themselves. They carry someone else's ceiling around for their entire life and call it realism. Notice how it shows up. A raise gets offered, and the first thought isn't excitement. It's suspicion. An opportunity to invest appears, and the first instinct is to find the reason it won't work. That's not caution. That's an old story talking, wearing the disguise of common sense. The second reason is comfort. Growth and comfort don't share the same room. One always pushes the other out. Most people, without ever deciding to, have built a life engineered for comfort. A steady paycheck, a routine that doesn't ask too much, a weekend that exists purely to recover from a week that drained them. There's nothing wrong with rest. Rest is necessary. But comfort, when it becomes permanent, turns into a ceiling. It quietly tells a person, "This is enough. Don't reach past it. The risk isn't worth it." And the tragedy is that most people never notice the ceiling. They just stop growing and call it stability. Comfort is patient too. It doesn't demand anything all at once. It just asks for one skipped hour today. And that's an easy thing to give up. Tomorrow, it asks again. A year of those small surrenders looks like nothing in the moment and adds up to an entire decade standing still. Think about the last time something actually changed for you. Chances are, it wasn't during an easy week. It was during a hard one. The layoff that forced a new skill. The rejection that forced a new plan. Comfort doesn't produce that kind of change. It isn't built to. Comfort's entire purpose is to keep things the way they are, and things staying the way they are is precisely the problem for anyone who wants a different life than the one they currently have. Wealth doesn't get built in the comfortable hours. It gets built in the hour after work, when everyone else is watching television and one person is reading, building a skill, starting the thing they've been putting off for years. That hour looks small. It isn't. Compounded over a decade, that single hour becomes the entire difference between the person still trading time for money at 60 and the person who owns something that pays them whether they show up or not. The third reason is the excuse. Every person who never builds wealth has one. It's usually well-dressed. It sounds reasonable. The economy is different now. I didn't have the connections. Some people are just lucky. Excuses are comfortable because they remove responsibility. If the economy is the problem, there's nothing to do but wait for it to change. If luck is the problem, there's nothing to do but hope it arrives. The economy is different now. It's said in every decade, by every generation, and it's been true and false at the same time in all of them. Conditions change. They always have. What separates people isn't the conditions. It's whether they treat the conditions as a wall or as terrain to work with. A wall stops you. Terrain just asks you to move differently. But look at anyone who actually built something from nothing. And the story is almost never about luck. It's about a decision made quietly, without an audience, long before there was any proof it would work. Somebody started the business while still working the job that paid the bills. Somebody learned the skill on a lunch break instead of scrolling through a phone. Nobody was watching. Nobody applauded. The decision got made anyway. The excuse and the decision can't exist in the same person at the same time. One has to go. And most people, quietly, choose to keep the excuse because the excuse doesn't require anything from them and the decision does. The fourth reason is time preference. What a person is willing to give up today for something bigger tomorrow. Most spending decisions aren't really about money. They're about mood. A purchase that feels good for an afternoon and is forgotten by the weekend. Multiply that pattern across years, and it adds up to a life spent buying small relief instead of building real freedom. This isn't only about spending either. It's about how a person spends their attention. An hour scrolling feels like rest but leaves nothing behind. An hour learning feels like effort but leaves something behind that compounds. Both hours disappear at the same rate. Only one of them comes back to you later with interest. Small decisions are easy to dismiss because they look too small to matter. A coffee here, a show binged there, a course never finished. None of it feels like the reason for anything. But a life is just a few thousand small decisions stacked on top of each other. And the stack is what shows up 20 years later, whether anyone was paying attention to it or not. Wealthy people aren't wealthy because they never wanted anything. They wanted something bigger than the thing in front of them, and they were willing to feel the discomfort of waiting for it. That's the entire skill. Not intelligence, not talent. The willingness to be uncomfortable now so that later doesn't have to be. The fifth reason is that most people stop learning the moment they leave school. They treat their mind like it's finished, like the education stopped and the earnings started. And those are two separate phases of life that never touch again. But income rarely rises above the level of a person's thinking. If a person doesn't grow, their income has no reason to. The people who build wealth read the books nobody assigned them. They study the skill nobody's paying them to learn yet. They treat their own mind as an asset that compounds the same way money does. And they invest in it on purpose every week, whether they feel like it or not. 5 years of that habit, and the gap between them and everyone who stopped learning at 22 isn't small anymore. It's the whole story. The sixth reason is environment. Nobody builds wealth in isolation from the people around them. A person surrounded by others who complain about money will start to believe complaining is normal. A person surrounded by others who build, plan, and take ownership will start to believe that's normal instead. Environment doesn't shout, it whispers every day until the whisper becomes identity. Look closely at the 5 people someone spends the most time with, and you'll usually find their income sitting somewhere near the average of the 5. Nobody plans that. It happens by exposure. The same way an accent forms without anyone deciding to speak that way. Changing that isn't about abandoning people. It's about adding new voices to the mix on purpose. A book from someone who thinks differently. A room full of people further along than you are, even if it feels uncomfortable to be the least experienced person in it. Environment can be inherited, or it can be chosen. Most people never realize the second option exists. The seventh reason gets talked about the least, and it might be the heaviest one. Most people are afraid of what it means to stand out. Building wealth means doing something different than the people around you. It means having a conversation your family doesn't understand. It means being asked why you're working 2 jobs when everyone else clocks out at 5 and relaxes. It means the possibility of trying and failing in public where people you know can watch it happen. So, a lot of people quietly choose to stay average, not because average is comfortable, but because average is safe. Nobody questions the person who blends in. Everyone has an opinion about the person who doesn't. That fear never announces itself directly. It shows up as, "I'll start next year." It shows up as, "Now isn't the right time." It shows up as every reasonable-sounding delay that keeps a person exactly where they already are, protected from the risk of being seen trying. The eighth reason is quieter than all of them. It's confusing motion with progress. Plenty of people are busy. Busy answering emails, busy running errands, busy attending to things that feel urgent. Busy fills a day completely and leaves nothing to show for it a year later. Progress looks different. It's slower, less visible day to day, and it's the only one of the two that actually moves a person somewhere new. A person can be exhausted every single night and still be standing in the exact same financial place they were 5 years ago, because effort and direction are not the same thing. So, what actually separates the person who builds wealth from the person who doesn't? It isn't the first big idea. It isn't a single lucky break. It's a decision, made privately, to stop waiting for permission, to take responsibility for a story that was handed down instead of chosen, to trade a few comfortable hours for a few disciplined ones, to let go of the excuse even when it's the easier thing to keep holding on to risk being seen trying and possibly failing instead of disappearing into the safety of average, to choose direction over motion, even when direction is slower and less impressive to watch. None of that is complicated. It's simple, it's just not easy, and that's exactly why most people never do. Here's the part that's easy to miss. None of these 8 reasons require more money to fix. Not one. A person doesn't need capital to question an inherited belief, doesn't need connections to trade a comfortable hour for a disciplined one, doesn't need luck to stop making excuses. Every single one of these starts and ends in the mind, long before it shows up in a bank account. That's the real reason wealth looks unfair from the outside. It looks like some people got a head start nobody else got. But pull back the curtain on almost anyone who built something lasting, and the head start was rarely money. It was a decision made years earlier that nobody else could see yet, made in an ordinary week, with no proof it would work and no guarantee it would pay off.